Welcome back, everybody. My name is Evan.
I'm Andrew.
And we're so glad that you've joined us back on the BCC pod. This is where we take what's happening in our church and what we're learning together on Sundays and bring it into unscripted conversations that dive just a little bit deeper. Whether you're tuning in on your drive or you're at the gym or we're just relaxing at home, we're so glad that you're here. And we're also very glad today that we are joined by another special guest, pastoral intern and preaching legend, Cherie. Okay, I should have asked this before we roll. Michels? Is that okay?
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was. Yeah.
No, it's all good.
The lack of an A.
I know. I always
got
get
me tripped
Cherie
up.
Michels. I'm like,
Michels.
no,
Cherie Michels.
not that fancy. Not that fancy at all.
You know, now that's all I'm going to call you, though.
Yeah.
Cherie
Cherie
Michels. I had an aunt that would refuse to call me Cherie because of the way my name is spelled, and it made my mother so mad.
Oh my gosh. That honestly sounds like an alter ego to me.
Cherie
There's like
Michels.
Cherie Michels, the preacher, and then there's Cherie Michels.
Cherie Michels.
So you were speaking this past weekend. You were talking about pride, and we're going to dive a little bit more into what you were talking about. First things first, how did you feel? Speaking, this is the second time you've preached here? Third
time, yeah.
How'd you feel preaching? How was it chatting with people after? You said some good things came out of that. And
Yeah. I felt like people they could relate to it. They understood, kind of how important the topic was, but also that it's really hard to talk about and that it's, I had some people that were really actually emotional about how certain things hit them. And it always surprises me what hits people. And so it was really neat to hear what people walked away from it with.
Yeah. The one thing that I normally throw at Andrew every week is to summarize his sermon in 4 words.
Yeah.
If you were to kind of summarize it, I'll give you a couple extra words if you want. But if you were to summarize it in 4 words, what would that be?
Yeah, well, listening to the podcast, I knew this was coming. So I did
figured you might have prepped
prepare
something.
for this. And I came up with a whole bunch of them,
multiple.
Oh, that's
No, but I had to settle on one because some of them were kind of like Andrew's over the past couple of weeks, where it was like this bad, that good.
Pride bad, humility good.
Not that that's bad, but the one I came up with, pride humbled, humility exalted. So I thought that was kind of...
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think you'd be at least Anders past 2.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's true. I like to use the word exalted. Like that's that's a good
even
word.
pulling in the really scriptural words.
Yeah.
For the kind of cut for time section, was there anything within the within your sermon that you couldn't get to because or anything you wanted to kind of nerd out about that you couldn't because of time?
I always want to nerd out. The things I really wanted to nerd out about were I really wished I could have brought in the idea of the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve and like really bringing in, because I talk about the fact that pride is known as the sin and the root of all sin. Like it's the root of all evil and all of sin. And so I really think that's because it was pride that drove Adam and Eve to really sin the first time. It was that desire to be better than, or to equate themselves with God, or to, why can't we have that thing? We want that thing too. And so I really wished I could talk more about Adam and Eve, or even just a lot of other people in the Bible who were good, bad examples of pride. So yeah, I had to kind of cut that. But yeah, and just the idea of what pride isn't. I felt like people would really, at least that was my idea, is I walked away from my research of pride of like, what is pride not? Because we use the word pride a lot in our world. So
Yeah.
what is pride, but what is it not? Are we allowed to say I'm proud of somebody or I'm proud of myself? Is that even allowed, or is that all sin?
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring that out because we've kind of been talking a lot about that in this series, just how like there's the blatant parts of pride and there are the things we kind of jump to think about, and then there are these kind of more like sneaky, insidious ways that it enters into our lives. And we've gotten a lot of questions in the past about like kind of like line questions of like what's the difference between greeding and wanting, or what's the difference between like passion and lust, or whatever it is, right? And like, so yeah, it is oftentimes, as we've been talking, it is more about sometimes defining what it's not than what it is, right? And like, because especially for the ones that are so embedded in our culture, just so normalized, like greed and like pride.
I think sometimes we equate pride as the same thing as self-esteem, And I think sometimes those are different things. And I think that's some of the nuance that sometimes we need to have in our conversations around it. But it can be hard to differentiate those two things.
Before we move on today, we wanted to let you know that nominations and the nomination process is still open and will be open until April 6th. These are nominations for a variety of different positions in leadership in our church. So things like the Board of Overseers, the deacons, and other positions are available. And we want to hear from you. These positions are filled by people who are a part of our community and part of our congregation. And we think that our congregation is the best suited to tell us who those people are. So if you or someone you know would be a good fit for any of the different positions that are up for nomination, we want you to let us know. And you can do that by filling out a form online. It'll be linked in the description of this podcast. And you can also find it on our website at bethanycc.ca/nominations. There's a full breakdown of all the different positions that are available and that we're looking to fill and a super easy way to nominate yourself or someone else in our community. So make sure to check that out. And yeah, it's open until April 6th. So we'll get into some questions today. We had some good questions from the congregation and then some that I threw in just for fun. So the first one is, why do you think pride is so difficult to detect in ourselves, especially when it's can be often disguised as confidence or ambition?
That's a really hard question because I think it's going to be different for everybody. I think sometimes we justify pride because we just think that we need to have a certain amount of pride. But like Andrew said, there's this idea of self-worth that mixes with pride, and what's self-worth, what's self-esteem, and what's pride, and where's that line in the sand. So I think that until you can really discern in your own life what is a healthy evaluation of your real actual abilities and calling in your life, and working toward that in a healthy way that's aligned with God, as opposed to kind of pushing your way through, bull in a china shop, really just making sure people know how good you are and make sure people think that you're amazing, and manipulating your life in such a way that it looks good to people on the outside, even though it might not be that on the inside. So it's really what your outward appearance is and how you want people to see you and understand about you, versus who you actually are on the inside. And then, just having a heart posture of recognition and just thanks all the time to God. And that's just something that's invisible. You can't see that. So people may not be able to see that in you.
Yeah.
So it's a really hard thing to discern. That's why I liked that C.S. Lewis quote where it's, everyone else knows that you have this thing, but you.
Yeah.
I kind of thought it felt like living in a room with no mirrors, or in a house with no mirrors, where you have something on your face and you can't see. You need someone else to tell you that, hey, I really see this in you, and it's going to be really hard to hear.
It's funny that we're talking about lines, because this is almost a bit of a line question, right? It's like, not only how do we detect it in ourselves, but where's the line between, like you're saying, healthy self-worth and self-esteem and that sort of thing. That we've been talking in terms of like consuming language when it comes to these sort of things, that like, well, I think that like being proud of yourself, or like you were saying, that self-esteem is different. There's also this thing of like, is it something that is consuming me? Do I feel like I have less control and awareness over it? Is it something that is dictating my decisions rather than, or like, is it a lens that I look through when we were talking about greed? So I think one of the big things is like, that's probably going to look different based on your context, like you're saying, and based on what your life looks like. And then, like self-awareness is so important, right? And self-awareness, I think, can be, the practice of it can both be looking into yourself and being aware of things going on with you, but then also putting in good accountability and putting in like stop gaps for things to keep you self-aware as well. So like for things like pride, when it's, like that C.S. Lewis quote, not often something we see in ourselves, that like putting in those kind of stopgaps or accountability structures so that you have good people who are speaking to you saying, hey, you should probably look a little more inward, or like at those sort of things.
And I like what you said too, Cherie, about like we've been using this word a lot in the last series, is discern. Like it's like you need also not only from other people but also from the Holy Spirit to like help you to see is there something within us that we need to be changed. And there's a theologian I like who says that if the Holy Spirit hasn't convicted you at all in the past year, you probably haven't been listening. Right? Like as if we're all so perfect and put together. And so I think with this, it's the same sort of thing. Is, are we listening to the Spirit too to help us discern if there is a pride that's rooted at all in our hearts?
The next question that we have, it says, what does it look like to practice humility in a world that rewards self-promotion? Or how do we practice humility in a world where pride is so normalized and embedded?
Oh, man. Yeah. Because, we promote ourselves everywhere. Whether it's, I think the weird thing for me is we're always used to businesses promoting themselves because, businesses are there to promote themselves, to make money, to be successful. But we've turned with social media into self-promotion and this idea of promoting who I am comparatively to other people. And so we post the best things of our lives and only the best things of our lives. And we just manipulate things to look a certain way. And I think one of the things that I thought of was just to set your private world to private. Because why are you setting it to public? I can understand businesses. I can understand, organizations and businesses putting those things to public settings. But why is your private life on public? Who are you competing with? And it's that idea of competition that really drives pride, because you're trying to do better, look better, be perceived as better than other people. And I think that's going to drive you to lose track of where the blessings that you do have come from.
Yeah. I think that's such a good point. Like, I used to have, just practically, I used to have all of my social media fairly open. And I went through that recently where I was just like, why? I'm like, I know the people that I care about. I use this as a form of connection, right? So that like practically even just like shutting those things off and like curating who you want involved in that and trying to craft it as a point of connection rather than it just being like just a presence online that you have, I think is really good. Because those things, like, it's important to protect those things. And I think like when it comes to the intentionality of using them, even just kind of drawing that line and keeping those things private or like having intentionality around it will help you when it comes to like pride. It will help you kind of start to move into the right focus for addressing like how you engage with things or how pride is in that sort of usage. Our next question says, what does it mean to empty yourself in a spiritual sense, and how do we make space for God's voice in our daily lives?
For me, emptying myself is realigning my perception of who I am with the reality of who God is. So the way that I can do that sometimes is I'll actually try to make myself feel small, try to go into a place where I'm in awe or wonder. Ways that I've done that in the past are, I don't know if you've seen this video online it's Carl Sagan. He has the pale blue dot.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. It's this video. And I mean, he's not a person of faith. But he talks about Earth as this insignificant little speck in the cosmos of the universe. And whenever I hear him talk about that, it makes me feel so small, because I'm hearing his words through a Christian perspective, through a Christian lens, and I'm recognizing God created everything, and I'm worried about like what? Right? It kind of realigns me with priorities and with important things. So I do that. And since we were in Isaiah, I'll say like reading scripture that talks about the greatness of God. So Isaiah 40 is a really great resource. There's a lot of really incredible, beautiful scripture in there that talks about just how big and amazing God is. And so when I think about who I am comparatively, it's not to demean myself, but it's to just realign myself with, I worship and am part of the family of this God who created everything and loves me. But why would I then think I know better than God? So that's just the emptying of myself, is just to say in front of God that I am yours to work with and work through, instead of having me be like, well, I think God would really want me to do this, or, this sounds like really great, or this would make me really popular, so then people would listen to me. It's like, but that's not necessarily what God wants from me. And if that is what God wants from me, then that's what will happen.
Yeah.
I really love that idea of awe or wonder opening up the right kind of forms of humility within us. Like, I hadn't really thought about that, but that is what it does. I liked how you said too, it doesn't demean us when we come into something that is so majestic, where we realize how great God is. Instead, we can find our more perfected kind of place within that. Yeah, I just like how our awe and wonder opens us up to the greatness of things and realigns where we're at. And maybe that's some of what we're missing then in this world that's so prideful, is a sense of wonder at the world around us, and a sense of wonder at the size and majesty of God too. So yeah, I never really thought about it like that. Like, that's a really cool insight.
All right, second last question. Why do you think humility has often been misunderstood as weakness throughout history, and how can we reclaim it as strength?
This is where you can get really nerdy, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm looking over at Andrew,
Sure.
because
Yeah.
I think he could probably
I think it's worth saying both of them looked at each other. Neither of them looked at me, which was the right call.
Oh, no.
Feel free to get nerdy with it.
Well, the way that I see it, I've studied a lot of Greek and Roman history, and it goes further back than that. But the idea that the Greeks and Romans lived in these cultures where honor was so important, and when we're talking about sin and virtue, the opposing, what they had was they had these, honor and shame. We have, pride and humility. They had honor and shame. So this was the life of the culture. People lived in this honor-shame culture. And then all of a sudden Jesus shows up and does something that is just not done by people who are in places and positions of honor. The fact that this person who comes and says, I am God, I'm the Son of God, I am the Messiah, and then dies willingly and is gentle and is not everything about Jesus was humble. And it went against everything that culture understood as normal.
Yeah.
There was a hierarchy. People who had power had honor, and people who were lower often lived in shame and just there was nothing for them. So when we transition over, I think the idea of pride and humility still holds the shame idea. I don't think we've moved past the shame of being low and looking at it in a hierarchical way.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we struggle with it, and why it's so historically seen as weakness, because it was weakness. It was only found in people who were weak. But then Jesus shows up and he has power, and he chooses to put that aside. But he's still powerful.
Yeah.
And it's just this conundrum that nobody can really understand or wrap their minds around.
Yeah. I think that's such a good point, because when I read this question, initially I thought technically it's not strength, right? If we're calling it strength, we're kind of, I think, massaging some words. That I would call that more of an artistic or poetic way to describe it. But I think it is wise, and I think it is the better yes. That humility, and you were saying that putting aside power or becoming lowly, that isn't strength, but it is wise. It isn't strength, but it is the better yes. And it does take strength to do. It takes a lot of strength, a lot of resilience sometimes to choose humility as the right path forward.
Yeah. You know what else I love that you made me think of is how in the Gospels, there's only one place where Jesus says what's at the center of who he is. I mean, I think he demonstrates it in lots of different places. I think he demonstrates his heart in lots of places. But it's only one place where he actually reveals it, where he says that I am gentle and lowly, or gentle and humble at heart. And if Jesus is our picture of God, if God is Jesus-y, that means at the center of God is humility as well. And I think our real problem with that kind of question is we assume that power and strength need to be top-down kind of power and strength.
Yes.
And that then, of course, that's going to run contradiction to humility. But I actually think there's a different kind of power and strength that humility reveals. It's just for us, when we say that, pride looks like strength or whatever else, it's because our view of strength is top-down power all the time. I don't think that's actually necessarily what we see biblically either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one says, how do we walk the line between acknowledging our God-given gifts and falling into prideful self-worship?
Yeah, so I think walking the line between, our gifts and self-worship, I think at the end of the day is, are you comparing yourself to anybody else? Because I think comparison is really the key to igniting pride. I think we have to recognize that God created each of us so uniquely that comparing ourselves and comparing our lives is kind of like comparing, apples to elephants. Like it just, there's nothing that I should have to compare myself to with anybody. And I think we so often fall into this idea that, well, like for pastors, if you want to be a good pastor, you should preach like these really famous pastors, or you should, look like these really famous pastors, or you should speak like this or do like that. And it's just, it can become, it just throws you so off course from what God actually has for you that I think that the comparison element of pride is what is so dangerous in our day-to-day, everyday world. And I think that's really what the difference is between really just honoring and experiencing and being strong in who God's making you to be. Like God calls us to be something. And I don't think that pride means that we should shy away from being who God created us to be. I think what humility does, so humility shouldn't shy us away from that. What humility should do, though, is it should make us stop and ask us, why am I doing these things? Why am I acting like this, dressing like this, being like this? Is it because this is authentically who God has created me to be, or is it because I think that if I do this, people will like me better, or I'll, appear a certain way to people, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that's the recognition of who you are, who God created you to be.
Yeah, I think there's a line in there too of just like living authentically. And I think for us as Christ followers, living authentically means living into the things that God has for you and the ways that he's directing you and your life. And that like humility is not a reason to shy away from living into those things or living authentically in that, right? But that there's like, this kind of like, that when we take comparison and it leads us to pride, that's also calling us into inauthenticity and not being who we are, whether it's preaching like somebody else who you don't talk like that but you think you should, or like wearing certain clothes or buying certain things, right? Because we're comparing and we're like acting out of pride.
The only like small little comment I was going to make on that is by recognizing that even our skills, they're still gifts. Like, and we're called to just keep giving gifts, and we're called to keep that circle of reciprocity and gift giving going. And if each of us does that, that can happen in a humble way. I think the problem is where we start to think of our gifts as skills that we have owned, that we have not received at all. But in the Bible, there's the talk about the reception of, spiritual gifts or just gifts in general. And yes, you have to use skills, and yes, you have to put in time and effort to grow them, but still they're ultimately gifts to be given to the world. And so I think, part of the way to combat that is remember that with humility, that everything is still a gift that we called to be sharing with other people.
Yeah. On the topic of gifts and those sort of things. You had a really good conversation, I think, back and forth with a congregation member, just clarifying some things that you had mentioned. If you want to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I received an email from a congregant who was just a little bit, they couldn't understand how I was using the word gifts when I was talking about privilege. And I was actually so thankful that they messaged me, because it has really made me consider how I use certain words and how I assume everybody would just see a word the way that I see it. I think that, Andrew, you do this really well too, is, we try to define the words we're talking about so that everyone's kind of on the same page. And I know we can't do that with every single word that we use, but this congregant was struggling with the idea that I used the word gift when I was talking about privilege, and how privileges are gifts from God. And the idea that if something like my skin color, or the fact that I have secure housing, or, all these benefits that it seems like I have in life that other people don't have, that kind of makes it seem like God's unfair and unjust. And I think that that's a really valid and important conversation to have. And I think it could probably be an entire sermon series talking about privilege. But I think when I really sat down and thought about it in a way that I wanted to respond to this person, and again, I was, it did not go over my head that I received an email about something that I said on the week that I was talking about pride and humility, but it was actually really healthy, because I was able to, I had surrounded myself with this idea and these topics of pride and humility. And then I get really my first email saying, hey, but, I don't actually think that you use this the right way. But because I had been studying it and looking into this, I was actually able to look at this as a blessing and look at this as an opportunity for not only me to have a conversation with somebody, but for me to actually learn more about maybe a blind spot that I had. But yeah, just the idea that privilege is, we only have privilege because we live in a broken world. Privilege is something that comes from brokenness, because God created the world in beauty and perfection with everybody equal. It doesn't, the only reason that my skin color in our culture would be a privilege is because there are people in this world who don't see every nationality and race and person as equal. So privilege comes because we have sin. But I still do believe that God has intentionality for each of our lives. And so when we're placed in a privileged position, the point of that isn't to sit there and say, I have all this privilege, I have, wealth, or I have whatever it is. The point is not to say, I'm just going to keep it for me. This isn't just to make my life cushy and my life wonderful. The point is, okay, I have all this privilege. What can I do with that, with this position that I've been given, to help bring the world back to a place of equality, or closer to a place of equality? How can I fight and how can I speak to people in a way that helps other people understand that racial injustice is not okay, that everybody is equal in God's eyes. Everyone is a child of God. Everyone is created in the image of God. And so I think it was an important question that I had. And I think even though it wasn't necessarily specifically about pride or humility as such, it's such an important element of it, is taking these privileges that we have and these ideas that I have more than you, and saying, yeah, but that shouldn't be the case. So is privilege a gift from God, or is privilege an outcome of sin? And how can we, all of these questions are whirring around in my mind now. And I'm like, now I know why people do PhDs, because they get stuck tornado. In the mind, in the library mind tornado is just, it's been really a great reminder to myself to just, what do I have? how can I be appreciative of that? And why did God give me everything that I have? Because I really do believe God gives us everything that we have.
Yeah, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Well, two things. One, I love that you had a Leaf season ticket moment. It's like, oh, I actually have to practice this. But then
I love it, that's what we're calling it now, by the way.
it also makes me feel like I'm next. Because I'm like, it happened to you, it happened to our
Right?
guest.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's coming. But yeah, it's that just because God didn't necessarily give it doesn't mean it can't be used, right? And doesn't mean it's not a part of your story, and does not negate the need for gratitude and for intentionality and for actually using the places and spaces and the things that we've been given for justice and for following Jesus well. And like, yeah, it is interesting though, because it is like, I think a semantic thing, or the things that like like people might be taking that differently that we would never think of, but radically can change how that lands with somebody, right, and is perceived.
What I would want to even echo is how often, even as a speaker or a preacher, that the stuff you end up preaching on is the stuff you end up being challenged on in your own life, and I just think that actually leads to healthy teaching and leading. But I am not surprised that you had that experience, and I've had that experience so often.
Yeah.
So because we have a lead pastor and a pastoral intern with us today, and probably two of the biggest nerds I know in the church.
I take that as a compliment. I really do.
It is a
I really
compliment. I figured we'd throw a bit of curveball and play a game today.
Oh, good.
Specifically a game.
I'm going to lose. So thank you for doing this again on my humility and pride week. This is great.
Specifically a game that I asked Chat GPT to make me. So this trivia game, they've and I will caveat this that I have to edit this as we go, because what it gave me doesn't fully make sense. But
Super.
for the most part, it's
Super.
kind of like, it's more like Bible trivia or trivia-ish with like loose pride humility ties.
Okay.
There are some rounds.
Oh, wow.
It gave me 3 rounds. There's a
Wow.
bonus round.
Oh, no.
It gave me rules.
This is intense.
Apparently funny or thoughtful answers in round 3 gets bonus points for style.
Okay. ChatGPT is going to be. We should also ask it to mark us.
Right?
It also said that the
Oh.
loser has to share a time they were accidentally prideful.
Oh, no.
But
Okay.
round 1, it's called this: Who said it? Pride or humility?
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you guys a quote. Some of these are Bible people. Some of them are not. Oh, no. Wait. No, all of them are Bible-ish.
Okay.
Oh,
Bible-ish.
Yeah, it's fine.
Bible
I'm
adjacent.
It's a quote
funny.
that kind of surrounds like pride and those
Sure.
sort of things, or humility, and you just tell me who said it.
Okay.
So the first one is I came, I saw, I conquered.
is that not like Caesar?
Ding ding.
Okay.
Julius Caesar.
I wouldn't call that Bible-ish, but sure.
He was historical.
He's
Yeah,
around
the
the
historical
time
time.
of the Bible. you know?
Jesus said his name.
Yeah, that's true.
So
Yeah.
I feel like that falls perfectly in
Yeah,
Bible-ish.
Now I know what Bible-ish means. So, okay. At first I was like, that's not a Bible verse. That's Julius
When I
Caesar.
said that we're editing GPT's game, it said you have to guess who said it and whether the quote is prideful or humble.
See, that's why, because you said, who said it, pride or humility? And then you said Julius Caesar. I'm like, that wasn't an option. I was going to say pride said that, but hey, Julius Caesar, sure, take the easy way out.
Apologies. Yes, we will have it's people.
Good.
Number 2, he must become greater, I must become less.
Isn't that John?
John the Baptist, can you give me the quote, like the scripture?
No.
John 1.
Somewhere in the realm of
Surprisingly,
John.
not that far off.
Yeah.
John 3:30. You got the book.
I got the
but that
book.
was kind of.
Yeah,
Cherie also gave you the name.
that's true. Yeah.
I'm just a servant doing what I was asked to do.
I don't know.
This one's like, I will tell you this. This one is strictly Bible. It's given
Strictly Bible.
me a verse quote.
right?
I am
Is
just
older.
a servant doing what I'm supposed
I am just a servant doing what I was asked to do.
Old or new?
New. We
Maybe
might
it's
run
a-
into some translation issues too. 'cause-
Yeah, I feel like that. Or is it with the servants?
Yes. This one just said biblical servant heart as the person.
That was the person?
I'm gonna look
in general?
I'm gonna.
Biblical servant. That sounds like a play, and that's the name of someone who doesn't really have a lot of lines.
Right.
Like biblical servant guy from the side. Yeah.
Person
like-
on stretcher 3.
Yeah, it's like one up from like when you get cast as a tree.
Yeah.
It says Luke 17:10.
Huh.
This is all going in.
That's wild. Because
So
you said
you
it was biblical,
also-
but then you said it was general servant person.
So you also, when you have done everything you were told to do, should say, "We are unworthy servants. We have only done our duty." Is that what I read?
No.
No. Why do I feel
You
like
said,
I read
I am
the
just
opposite?
a servant doing what
I-
I'm supposed to do
That
or
is a
something.
crazy way to phrase that.
That is why you can't trust Chat GPT.
Never ask GPT
know?
for your Bible translation.
This is
It's like,
not
yeah.
a highly sophisticated way
I
to
think
do
it's
work.
tied up after round one.
I think so.
That's
think so.
exciting. Round 2 is called Bible Boss or Bible Flop. I'm gonna give you a Bible story
Okay.
where somebody showed humility or pride, and then you tell me where in the Bible it comes from.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay, yep.
Book of the Bible, honestly, bonus points if you can get the
Sure. Chapter
quote.
verse. Yeah.
King Nebuchadnezzar building a giant statue of himself.
Yeah.
Is it wrong that I can only think of the VeggieTales?
No, that's the right thing to think.
That's
of.
exactly what it is.
The bunny. I love
Also,
the bunny.
You
I would argue
was
that's a
raised
thoughtful
on
answer.
Jesus and talking vegetables. Okay,
Yeah,
so
that's great.
I would argue that's a thoughtful answer that gets bonus points.
Book is the end.
David.
that
Oh yeah, what book is it?
is that. No, wait.
Daniel.
That was. Oh, I should
Daniel.
have said it. No, I was gonna say that, and I doubted myself, and
Your pride got in the way because you were worried about
I
being
didn't
wrong.
want to be wrong. I didn't want to be wrong. Yeah.
David dancing before the Lord even when mocked.
I'm gonna say that Psalm somewhere.
Incorrect.
Oh,
Yeah. 1 Samuel.
Incorrect.
2 Samuel.
Second Samuel.
I thought that David. Anyway, we're not getting into why I thought it was 1 Samuel.
It could be wrong too. I don't.
you telling me there's no psalm at all that says that I will dance before the Lord?
There's probably one.
And
If you can find it and send it to me, I'll say a retraction in next week's
Sure. Yeah.
podcast episode. Peter refusing to let Jesus wash his feet.
John.
Yeah.
I was like, which
think it's
gospel
like,
was that
John.
in? I'm like going to the end of all the gospels.
14 is my guess. 13. No.
It is 13.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's one thing. I have been through 3 years of theological training, and that is still the one thing I can't do is like pull the chapter and verse out of my head. I can be like, I know it happened.
Yeah.
Generally,
I will say this: it's helped if you've preached on them. And
Oh,
I have, 'cause then
100%.
Then, like, you think about all those sermons I've given, like
100%.
that stuff just gets ingrained. Way
Yeah.
more, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah,
I feel like you're also just kind of weird.
yeah.
For
think
sure.
Like, I
also-
feel like it's
For sure.
abnormal how much that you retain in your head.
yeah,
in
that's
a good
probably
way.
true. No, that's a fair thing. Krista would 100% agree. Yeah, she would have stronger words with it.
Moses saying he wasn't good enough to lead.
going to be in Exodus.
Boom.
3.
Exodus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. See,
let's
I
go.
preached on that.
See, you knew it. I knew. This is it.
And the Pharisee thanking God he wasn't like other sinners.
That is the parable of the tax collector and the Pharisee.
In?
Luke?
Yeah, nice.
Again, preached
Chapter?
on that one.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh,
I could guess, but I don't know it.
I'll take your guesses.
I was going to say 6, but no. That's
I was going with 17, but
Oh.
18.
18.
Did you say 17? Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Again, Abnormal.
Yeah, so that's weird. Yeah, that's.
I'm like, it's in the third half of the blue. I'm like, so that many chapters. I'm like doing mental math. I'm like, it's got to be around 17.
Yeah.
We're gonna skip the round 3 that it had, which was it came up with like statements, and it said like it's gonna give you an everyday life scenario, and you have to tell me whether that's is genuine humility, false humility, or pride with good PR. But the lines that they give are rough. One says, "I don't think I'm that smart. I just happened to graduate top of my class." So we're gonna jump to the bonus.
Some humble bragging if I've ever heard it.
We're just gonna jump to the bonus round.
I love the fact
3 questions. It's gonna be fill in the verse.
Okay.
So
okay.
I'm gonna give you the start of it, and you're gonna fill in the last word. Sorry, Cherie.
Okay. No, like the words are fine. It's just figuring out which chapter and verse is hard for me. So.
Oh yeah, no chapter and verse, just word.
All right.
And next time Mills doesn't get to play.
Unfair.
So the first one, I'll give you the reference too. So the first one comes from Proverbs 16, and it says, "Pride goes before blank."
The fall.
Yeah, I mean, we'll take it. Anybody have another word?
Oh, I was going to say the same thing. Probably goes
Okay,
before
yeah.
the fall.
I think that whatever translation they got it from was destruction, but same thing. I knew it as the fall.
Yeah.
So. Second one, humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will blank. From James 4.
I don't know. I want to say he will hear your prayer. But
Incorrect.
it's one word.
Cherie, any guesses?
See, he just thought of it. Let him take it.
No.
No. I don't have an answer. I'm guessing. So.
Go for it.
Now I don't remember what I had. I thought I did have it for a second.
Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up.
Actually, you know what the real term is? Sorry.
Is it exalt?
You're going into
It's
Greek?
exalt. It is. Yeah, going right back to your very first
gosh, we
comment.
came full
It's exalt.
circle.
We
It's
have
exalt.
come full
That's what it
circle.
is.
We
Yeah.
did it. Last one. God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the blank.
Humble.
1 Peter 5:5.
I'm going to say humble because.
Gives grace to the humble, which is a great place for us to end today. Great job. I think you all get, you both get bonus points, and it happened to come out to a direct tie. So
Andrew, I give you a gold star.
I'm going to say
stars
that
for everyone.
I'm going to say that nobody wins. Chat GPT loses. So that's a wrap for today's episode. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. And thanks, Cherie, for joining us and chatting with us. We love having these conversations, but they're even better when you're a part of them. So make sure that if you've got questions, thoughts, or topics that you'd love to hear, shoot us a message at 905-937-5300, or you can email me or Andrew or Cherie or anyone, and it'll get back to me somehow. We would love to hear from you. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the BCC pod wherever you're listening so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the podcast, do us a favor and leave a quick rating or review. It's a simple way to help others find us and be encouraged as well. Thanks again for listening, and to Cherie for joining with us. And we will see you all on Sunday and back here next week. See ya.